Well, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome in from around the world today. My name is Jesse. I'm here with Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. And I know we've got some familiar faces in the crowd on YouTube today, but if you are new to us, like our StreamYard Join Your Speaker, we are all about bringing conservation, adventure, and science into classrooms around the world. Now, everything we do goes to our YouTube channel. So if you want to watch this in 3 weeks or 3 years or 300 years, if you live that long, great, you're welcome to. It's all going to be right there. Lots of ways to keep the learning going. Now, today is particularly exciting for a number of reasons. Number one, this is our entire month solely dedicated to the most amazing, awesome women in science and exploration on planet Earth. We kick out all the dudes every February. We've done this since our inception. We've got like 55 programs this month alone. It has been so much fun, and we've got so much more to come. I really encourage you, check out our If Then series coming next week. 16 amazing ambassadors from the If Then campaign, one of the coolest women in STEM things that has ever been done. We're really thrilled to be joining you live with that. Now, today, it's also very exciting because we're bringing back one of the best people we've ever had on. Now, I could tell you about her epic career studying glaciers around the world. She's going to do that in a minute. I could tell you about the fact that she's the first winner of the Shackleton Medal, which is like the ultimate medal for polar explorers on planet Earth, which is pretty cool. We have a lot of medal winners. That's a pretty unique medal to win. So she's very awesome. But more than all of that, I will say it is very rare that I run into people as over-enthusiastic as I am. And you're in for such a treat because Dr. Heidi Sevestre is going to take us on a journey of her journeys around the globe today. I hope you're as pumped as I am. I'm going to stop talking without further ado. Dr. Heidi, welcome to the broadcast again. So nice to have you.
Hello, Jesse. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I am so excited to be here with you today. Thank you for having me again. I hope you're ready. Buckle up, people, because I'm going to take you on an adventure today. My job is quite a special job. I get to study ice around the world. I became a glaciologist, which is the name of my profession, about 10 years ago. And so today I want to take you with me around the world on different expeditions to understand what it's like to be a glaciologist, to look at incredible landscapes, and also to learn about some of the adventures I've had the chance to go through in my career. So first, I wanted to start from where I come from. This is where I grew up in the French Alps. Look at this tiny, lovely village. There were 15,000 inhabitants there when I grew up. And when you grew up in a place like this, let's be honest, there's not much to do. And I actually love this because I spent my entire childhood walking around, hiking in the mountains around my tiny village. What I was really obsessed with when I was very young was wildlife. I really wanted to see animals, to surprise them, take pictures of them. I don't know if you were like me, but from a very young age, I was totally falling in love with nature. And that led me to spend a little bit more time in the mountains. And I've managed to dig up some pictures of myself when I was very young. So you can laugh at my haircut. I think my mom was cutting my hair. But this is what I looked like when I was about 10 and 12. And I started to do quite a fair bit of climbing, of mountaineering, of spending more and more time higher and higher up in the mountains. And I actually met someone when I was 17 who totally changed my life. His name was Hubert, and Hubert was a guide, a mountain guide from Switzerland. And Hubert told me, Heidi, there are people who get paid to be in the mountains. There are people who get paid to study ice around the world. And these people are called glaciologists. Why don't you become a glaciologist? And since then, that's all I wanted to become. I wanted to study ice. And so luckily, this is what I managed to do. Studies to become a glaciologist are quite long, but I had the time of my life studying to become a glaciologist. And the very first glacier, or glacier, as you would say in America, the very first glacier I studied was actually in the European Alps. And look at that beast on this picture. This is the Tria Glacier in the Swiss Alps. And this is as magnificent as it can be. So these glaciers are very simple things, actually. I don't know if you've ever thought about how glaciers form, but it's very simple. To make a glacier, you just need to be in a place that is cold enough year-round to make sure that snow doesn't totally melt during the summer. And what happens is that year after year, snowfall after snowfall, the snow becomes older, heavier, and the snow will turn into ice. So this is how the Trian Glacier was born, the one you can see here on the picture there. This is a very old picture, but I wanted to show you how much the glacier has changed over the years. When I studied the Trian Glacier, this is how much ice was left. Not much. You can see, I've delineated the glacier with a little yellow line. And what happened? What happened between these two pictures? Well, it's very simple. Climate change happens. Between these two pictures, the temperatures on Earth have risen very, very quickly. And glaciers are very simple things. They don't like heat. They don't like to see temperatures increase on Earth. And at the moment, we're seeing that around the world, all the glaciers are reacting to climate change, and most of them are actually shrinking, are getting smaller and smaller every year. But it is very important to study this ice. And throughout this short presentation, I want to tell you why it is so important to have people like me, glaciologists, who travel around the world to better understand how ice is reacting, how ice is responding to climate change. So, for example, in my country and in Canada, in the US as well, we still need glaciers for all the reasons you see here on the picture. So when you look at a beautiful glacier, you will notice that during the summer months, it will melt a little bit. This is totally normal, totally natural that we get water from these glaciers. And this water, well, it's melted snow, it's melted ice, so it is fresh. You could actually drink it. It is no problems. And this water, well, we can use it for many different reasons. We can use it for drinking. We can use it to grow plants, to grow food. We can use it to produce energy. In some places, you might be able to ski on the glaciers during the summer months, and that brings a lot of money for the town, for the region where there is a ski resort. So for all the reasons you see here on the image, we still need these glaciers to stay healthy, to stay happy, and to survive to climate change. So the glaciers, unfortunately, as I told you, they're changing very, very quickly. I'm going to show you a very quick video here. This is actually the biggest glacier we have in my country, in France. And it's not a very big one compared to the US or compared to Canada. But look at how quickly the glacier has changed over the years. So I'll show the video again. There might be a little bit of lag. Let me see. Oh, I can see it's struggling a little bit. But basically, the glacier is thinning and thinning and thinning year after year. And this is, again, a way glaciers react to climate change. Not only they're getting shorter and shorter, but they're also thinning. They're deflating a little bit like a balloon. So this is what we're observing all around the world. So let me take you now on a little bit of an adventure with me. Throughout my studies, I was very lucky to be able to travel to study ice. And the first place I traveled to, and that might surprise you, was actually the United Kingdom. Why? Okay, there are no glaciers left there, but basically they have some of the best scientists who study ice from around the world. And because I studied there, I was able to travel and to spend a lot of time in the field looking at glaciers. And the first place I want to take you to are the Himalayas. I mean, when you ask a glaciologist, would you like to travel to the Himalayas? Of course. This is the place where you find the tallest mountains on the planet. So, of course, you will find some of the most magnificent glaciers on Earth. And so I joined a very small expedition for about a month, traveling to Nepal, traveling to the Himalayas. And when you go to Nepal, I mean, you encounter, first of all, a country, a different culture. The people there are brilliant. They're so nice, so welcoming. But in order to reach the ice, in order to find those high enough mountains, you need to do a lot of walking. My gosh, you need to be pretty fit in order to travel to these places. And first, you travel across forests you see here on the pictures. Slowly but surely, you start crossing big rivers on beautiful bridges. And eventually, you can see in the lower right picture, you start to see these magnificent mountains. These are the tallest mountains in the world. And what I did there with my team was actually to understand how the ice was reacting to climate change. And what we're observing there is actually very, very interesting. Because as I told you, it's totally normal that during the summer months, glaciers melt a little bit. And so this water has to go somewhere. And when sometimes it goes into rivers and the water goes away, it's no problems. It doesn't create any issues. But we have a big, big problem in the Himalayas, is that when glaciers get shorter and shorter and continue to lose more water every summer, the water cannot escape. The water is stuck behind these massive towering walls you see here on my slides. You see, I'm pointing these big walls with my laser pointer. These are called moraine, glacial moraines. They were basically built by the glacier. The glacier is like a big conveyor belt. Everything that's falling on the glacier will basically be transported by the glacier and then dumped on the side of the ice. And so all around glaciers, you have these massive piles of rocks that can sometimes be hundreds of meters tall. And so what happens, you have this big pile of rocks. When the glaciers start to retreat because of climate change, it will create a big dam. And this dam will prevent the water from escaping. And the problem is that eventually this will create a lake. The level of the lake will rise higher and higher every year. And eventually the natural dam is not strong enough to hold all this water. It will break, it will burst open, and this will create a tsunami in the mountains. And this is very dangerous, as you can imagine. I mean, if you were to have your house just by this big wall that could break at any moment, you would be fairly scared, and rightly so. And unfortunately, in the Himalayas, because glaciers retreat more and more, because they melt more and more, we have more and more frequent tsunamis in the mountains. And so during this expedition, this was one of my favorite expeditions in the Himalayas, we actually met some of the people living in the area. For example, this amazing yak herder. Look at these baby yaks. Look at how cute they are. They were such troublemakers. I remember they were always running around our tents and they wanted to come into the tents. In the end, they never managed. But we remember, speaking to this gentleman and asking him, do you remember the tsunami? And actually, he had such a funny story to tell us, and I'm happy to share it with you today. He wasn't there when the tsunami happened, luckily, but he was celebrating a wedding in the nearby valley. So he walked for a day and a half to go to the wedding. I think he enjoyed himself very much. And then when he walked back to his little hut just by the glacier, he had partied a little bit too hard and he fell immediately asleep. And when he woke up, he couldn't recognize his valley. He couldn't find his yaks anymore. Everything around his little hut had been destroyed. And luckily, he remembered that he was actually in the right hut. He was at the right place. But he noticed that something terrible must have happened. And so he's a survivor of one of these tsunamis. And I'm so happy that this gentleman was there to tell us his story. So let me continue our little adventures around the world. So after traveling to the Himalayas, I had the chance to be invited on another expedition, this time to Greenland. Look at this, the size of Greenland. Greenland is one of the biggest, I think it's the biggest island in the world. And it's almost totally covered by ice. So another place that is a paradise for people like me who like ice and who like to study it. Traveling to Greenland is not a simple feat. What we had to do is take a series of planes, of tiny, tiny planes at the end to be able to land on the magical, the magnificent, the white expanse of the Greenland ice sheet. And this was my first polar expedition taking place in the Arctic. And let me tell you, it was very, very difficult. It was so cold traveling to Greenland. I remember, look at the tiny tents we were sleeping in. And I remember the first week of our expedition. Guess how cold it was? It was actually minus 45 degrees Celsius. Jesse will help me to translate this into Fahrenheit. Minus 45 Celsius in my tent when I was trying to fall asleep at night. So it was very, very difficult. But what did we do when we were in Greenland? We were actually trying to understand how much ice there is in Greenland. Because imagine if Greenland were to melt, if Greenland was reacting quickly to climate change, what would happen? The ice would melt, and this would actually increase sea levels around the world. So in places like New York, for example, in Beijing, in certain places in France, actually, if the ocean levels rise, we might be in a little bit of trouble. So for that, in order to understand how much ice we had in Greenland, we used a radar that basically sends radio signals into the ice. It works a little bit like a sonar and tells us how thick the ice is underneath our feet. And there, so I was sitting with the instrument, with the sonar. A friend of mine was driving a snow machine to pull the equipment. And where we were, there were hundreds of meters of ice underneath our feet. It was absolutely crazy to see how much ice there was. And unfortunately, we detected that in Greenland as well. Well, there is a lot of melt, that Greenland is reacting very quickly to climate change. And unfortunately, the more Greenland melts, the more sea levels around the world will rise. And so this is a picture of me by minus 45 degrees Celsius. Let me tell you, I definitely learned how to stay warm when it's very cold on expeditions like these. I suffered a little bit, but I'm so glad that I was able to learn a lot from my colleagues. And now the last place I want to take you to is actually the place where I'm speaking to you from right now. It's a place that is so close to my heart. I love being here, and I'm lucky to spend parts of the year here. Look at what is happening far north on the map here. This is where I am at the moment, on the archipelago of Svalbard in the Norwegian Arctic. This place is magnificent, but first of all, do you really know what the Arctic is like? When we look at the planet from the North Pole, this is what we see. We see, first of all, a big ocean. The North Pole, that is somewhere around here, has its feet in water in the glacial Arctic Ocean. And the ocean is so cold that there is actually a layer of ice covering it permanently, which is called Arctic sea ice. And so where I'm speaking to you from right now is from right there, the archipelago of Svalbard, which is very close to Greenland. So this is where I was showing you pictures from just the past few slides. So let's zoom in on the archipelago of Svalbard. Look at how beautiful it is here. First of all, we have barely any vegetation here because it's so cold for most months of the year. So we don't have any trees. Well, actually, this is not true. We do have trees, but the trees are this big because it's so cold and so windy. We also have a very interesting fauna and flora in Svalbard. You know, the true inhabitants of Svalbard are these big guys. These are the polar bears. And where I live, in the village where I am today, we actually have 2,500 inhabitants. And in the entire region, there are 3,000 polar bears. So we always have to be very careful because we are in their territory. You know, we are in their kitchen, in their living room. So we really don't want to disturb them. You know, they are the kings and the queens of the Arctic, and it's always so special to be able to see them. And polar bears are animals that love swimming. They're much better swimmers than I am, and they love cold water. So for them, poof, it's nothing to be swimming in such cold water. But Svalbard at the moment looks like this. It is dark pretty much 24 hours a day. And it's a bit difficult. You know, I'm really missing to see sunlight. Sunlight will be coming in a few weeks. But we might not see the sun, but sometimes we see these magnificent things, which are northern lights or auroras. And at the moment, I don't think I see any northern lights, but who knows, maybe in a few hours, we'll be able to see some. And so Svalbard has become a place that is very, very important to my heart, I was telling you. But it's also a place that is very important for scientists because, unfortunately, this is the place that is getting so warm because of climate change. It's the fastest warming place on Earth. And what I'm showing you now is actually not very nice at all. These were some friends of mine who got stuck because temperatures increased by about 20 to 30 degrees Celsius in a few hours, which is really abnormal for Svalbard. And they got stuck out and about in the field, and they were trying to come back to town, but unfortunately the rivers started melting, started thawing, and look at them, they had to cross these rivers with cold water up to here. My gosh, it was extremely dangerous. And so what I do here when I'm in Svalbard, it is to study climate change because, again, this is a place that is warming 6 to 7 times faster than the rest of the world. And so it makes this a very important place, not only to study ice, but also to tell the world about the importance of the Arctic and the importance of ice. And so I love what I'm doing with you right now, which is to share scientific facts with the youth, but also with important people, with policymakers. And so science communication has become a really big part of my life. And today, I'm actually really happy to tell you this, but I have an entire series on National Geographic called Arctic Ascent that just came out a few days ago. And in this series, I take some of the best climbers in the world to Greenland. So perhaps you'll have the chance to see this series for yourself and see how much I struggle climbing in Greenland with these amazing climbers. So I think being a scientist today is not only studying these magnificent landscapes, but also making sure that the whole world understands the science and understand why we need to act, why we need to fight against climate change today. So I will stop right there. Thank you so very much for your attention. And I believe we have a little bit of time to answer some questions. So I'm all ears. Thank you very much.
We certainly do. Heidi, that was spectacular. Not just your passion, but also, and this is a high bar for us, maybe the best group of pictures and videos we've ever had in our history. So thank you very much for that. You are an incredibly lucky woman to have those opportunities and richly deserved all the accolades you've gotten for adventuring in all those places.
Thank you, Jesse.
There's a great first question, which we get with a lot of explorers. Are you ever afraid? Some of these things look pretty challenging. And, whether you're dragging a sledge through some slushy water or hiking a mountain on Arctic ascent in Greenland, it seems like it could be a little sketchy sometimes. Do you ever feel that way? And how do you get past
it? It is such a great first question. And thank you, whoever asked it. I am scared. I mean, most of the time in these regions, and actually being scared is nothing to be ashamed of. Actually, being scared is a very good thing, because if you're scared, it means that you're really watching what's happening around you and that you understand that nature is more powerful than you are. And I think this is really, really important, because here, if I go outside to study some glaciers, I have to understand that I'm nowhere near as strong as the landscape around me. And so I think being scared really gives you a healthy dose of respect for these environments. And you respect nature a lot more, and you are a lot more careful. So being scared, I think, really helps you to avoid a lot of trouble. So I really respect my fear, and I'm never ashamed to tell my friends and my colleagues when I'm really, really scared.
I knew you were going to answer it that way, and I'm so happy you did. This is something that we hear from a lot of explorers that I think a lot of students wouldn't expect. When I was a boy, when I linked to my favorite explorers, I thought they were fearless. They're going intrepidly into the distance and doing whatever with no sense of that at all. And universally, the answer is what you said. And that's a really important note, that we're all afraid, and we learn the limitations of ourselves, of the gear that we have. We train, we prepare, and we put ourselves in situations where we're unlikely, hopefully, to have anything that is worthy of really being a risk to us. So
absolutely.
Speaking of scary landscapes, you highlighted this tsunami in the mountains, which is not a phrase one hears very often. Has this ever been filmed? Has anyone captured this firsthand in any fashion that you know of or no?
Yeah, Jesse, I think we have a lot of pictures, actually photographs taken from people who were around, but we don't have videos simply because people are just running for their lives usually when this happens. And so we're lucky to have a lot of satellite images now of these sort of tsunamis, of these extreme events. But I've never actually seen a video filmed with a phone from such accidents. But unfortunately, we might get some, very, very soon, because we get more and more of these tsunamis happening in the mountains. But I'm also very happy to say that thanks to scientists, thanks to engineers, today we are really good at installing alarms to make sure that when a tsunami takes place kilometers away from a village, people get a warning system or a warning, an alarm, a really loud sound. So they have a couple of minutes to take a bag of stuff, their most important possessions, and run on higher ground to avoid the tsunami. So I'm so glad to see, fantastic partnerships being created between the people in the Himalayas and engineers from around the world. We need to help them. We need to protect them. And I'm so chuffed to see these alarm systems being built all over the Himalayas.
The science behind warning for storms, for activities of all sorts of like natural phenomena that can put you at risk, are fairly new in the scheme of things. Like 100 years ago, if a hurricane was coming, you had no idea other than, oh, it looks kind of stormy over there. And now we know 5 days in advance, and that is crucial for saving lives. Also, I'm so glad you mentioned these partnerships. Literally next week, we've got Smart Ice, which is indigenous knowledge keepers and Western scientists that are tracking how the sort of meltwaters affecting sort of travel routes in Canada's Arctic to make sure that people don't plunge into the ocean, basically. And so we're really excited to feature that in just a few days.
Oh, Smart Ice is absolutely wonderful. Please say hi to everyone from Smart Ice. They're so great.
I certainly will. A question I knew we were going to get, and it's very challenging. Is there a favorite expedition of yours, or no way?
Okay. Actually, there is one. It's
wow.
Also, all my babies, these expeditions, but there is one that I will absolutely never forget. It's one of my last big expeditions here on Svalbard. Guess what? It was an all-female expedition. So we were 4 girls, all glaciologists, climate scientists, and geologists. And I think that the fact that we were 4 girls really helped, because I want to explain what happened during the expedition. We got the worst weather I've ever seen here in the Arctic. Oh my gosh. It was so scary. It was so stressful. We got winds that were hurricane force winds when we were in the field on the glaciers, and we were camping. We were traveling on skis the whole way. And so we were very vulnerable. And it was quite dangerous to be outside in such crazy conditions. And you know what we did? And actually, this relates to one of the first questions you asked me today. We decided to always follow the advice of the person who was the most scared in the team. And so I think we avoided a lot of problems by following the person who was basically the most sensible. And we ended up having to dig a hole in the snow to sleep in that hole for 3 days to wait for the storm to pass. And lucky in my team, it wasn't shameful to say that we were scared. And so because of this, I think it was the friendliest expedition I've ever been a part of. Not that a mixed expedition or an expedition of just guys would have been different, but with the people I was sharing this expedition with, I felt at ease, I felt comfortable, and I felt supported. And we all had good days, we all had really bad days, but you always had such an amazing team of women around you. So I felt so fortunate to be able to spend a month with them. And I think by far this was my very best expedition. Yeah, really glad we managed to do it.
Very cool. This is Climate Sentinels, yes?
It was Climate Sentinels, exactly. And I think, didn't we talk about this together?
We did. I was just going to say 2 things. So our classes can check out your website, which has all sorts of information about more of your expeditions, anything else they want to find. You have some amazing social media stuff going on. But our YouTube channel has Climate Sentinels, we talked about, and tropical glaciers, which is a really weird phrase to say. So right up there with mountain tsunamis, tropical glacier, mountain tsunami. We cover a lot of interesting ground whenever we have you on, which is a lot of fun.
Lots to talk about. Absolutely.
Fantastic. That's such a great answer. It's so nice. Megan, our tech extraordinaire person joining in Maine today, she wanted to know if there's a hardest part of your job. Is there something that really stands out as being really tricky or not?
What a great question. I really see my life as divided into two parts. There is my life in the field, and there is my life off the field, when I'm like here in civilization. So I think when I'm in the field, absolutely. I think the hardest part of my life in the field is, when the weather is really bad, or when the team is a little bit not very motivated. Sometimes it happens when everybody is very tired, and sometimes it's quite dangerous. So I would agree that this is probably the hardest part of my job in the field. But this is totally offset by how magnificent the landscapes we travel to are. It's totally offset by the importance of the science that we do. But I agree, there are sometimes in the field some moments that are a little bit tricky to deal with. But then when I'm not in the field, to me, I think my biggest challenge is how can we make sure that everybody understands that we need to fight climate change. And when I say everybody, I don't mean just the youth. I think the youth knows what's happening, and the youth, I mean, you guys are so fantastic and always so motivated to act. And, my heart goes out to you. Thank you for everything that you do. But what is very difficult for me is to make sure policymakers, presidents, head of states, ministers, all these important people really understand the science. And so sometimes, I feel like I'm speaking to a wall and then nobody understands what I'm talking about. So I like a good challenge. I like the challenge of making science accessible. But sometimes I find it very difficult when a government decides to drill for more oil and more gas, which is definitely the case in my country. And I wish they would understand that we need to stop burning fossil fuels, and we really need to protect the planet as soon as possible. So this is a little bit hard, but I think instead of complaining that it's hard, for me, it's a challenge. And I love a good challenge. And so I wake up every morning thinking, I'm going to get them. This is a good challenge. I want to make sure that I do a good job at explaining the science to make sure they can make the right decisions. So, yeah.
Heidi, my face always hurts from smiling when I'm in the broadcast with you, which is a good problem to have. It's inspiring to me, and I get to hang out with a lot of very inspiring people. So kudos to you. That was a great answer.
Thank you.
And I want to note, you're right. Like, kids know, which is fantastic. Like, I think everyone assumed my generation would be the one that would lead the charge, and we were okay. We're fine. But like 16-year-olds and under, like, know this. They're passionate. They march in groups of 500,000. And frankly, I want to stress to our kids, because climate change, like biodiversity loss, are these big challenges we're facing. And we talk a lot about the negatives of that in these broadcasts. And I want to mention that, like, in the last 20 years, the shift in politics, in public understanding to green energy, all these things has been absolutely ridiculous. Like, it is too slow, and we recognize that, and that is unfortunate. But like the fact that we've gone from like solar, that's ridiculously expensive and no one will ever have that, and maybe we've got a panel this big, to like we're covering swaths of the desert to power cities of millions, has happened in the scheme of the world insanely quickly. So it's been really impressive to see that positivity, and I want to make sure that our kids take home that as well, that people like Heidi are having a real impact, and there is lots of good being done.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more, Jesse. Thank you for bringing this up. And I also want to stress the fact that, I feel super lucky to have been born during this time of global changes. And this is what I tell my students here. This is what I tell the youth I work with. I tell them, okay, you might feel a little bit overwhelmed about, hearing about climate change, hearing about biodiversity loss, but actually look at, you can flip this on its head. Think about the fact that today you can literally, and I'm not joking, you can wake up in the morning and you can be a part of this amazing global movement that contributes to saving biodiversity, to saving the ice, to saving the planet. So I really feel lucky to be, at this time in the history of humanity, and together we can make the greatest things. So, let's continue working together, because everything needs to be reinvented, and we can make the planet healthier. We can save humanity. We can make the animals and the plants happier. And there are so many good reasons to act today. Let's absolutely team up and continue pushing in the right direction.
I'm going to send along to all our registered classes 2 amazing books on this front, Drawdown and Regeneration, which are just amazing books looking at basically positive ways we can make an impact in the world and the science behind that. They're really rigorously done. They're really optimistic. They've got great websites associated with them. So if your class wants to take action to help fight climate change, to help save species, those resources are some of my one-stop shops to do just that. So, Heidi, time flies and you're having fun. We're nearing the end of the broadcast, so I want to wrap up with a question that I always love to ask personally, which is for our students that might want to become glaciologists or adventurers or polar guides, what is a piece of advice to get your foot in the door in exploration?
This is such a great question. I think, the one thing that has been my guiding line throughout my life is that I'm able to pause and really observe nature around me. And nature doesn't have to mean that you have to travel to these remote locations. Not at all. You can be in a city, you can be in a town, and just look at the clouds passing by. You can look at how a little bird is flying around you. You can look at these tiny plants that are trying to grow through the pavement. And I think this is really important if you want to become a scientist like me, if you want to become a guide, an adventurer, an explorer. I think you need to be able to keep this. I was about to say naivete, but it's not naivete. I think it's to keep being amazed by nature. Nature is incredible. And every time I get to look at the clouds, look at the sun, look at the northern lights, I cannot believe how incredible nature is. So as long as you can keep being amazed, well, this will be your guiding line and this will be your biggest passion, and your biggest passion can become your job, can become your work. And this is what I get to do today. A few hours ago, I was actually, just before talking to you, I actually traveled inside a glacier, and that will be maybe a new session with you, Jesse. But I was able to enter into the ice, and I was there with a couple of friends. We could not believe what we were looking at. It was just the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. And I think if I wasn't in love with these environments, I wouldn't have become a glaciologist. So keep being amazed, keep walking around, keep hiking, keep observing this beautiful nature. There's nothing quite like it. And we really need to work with nature to keep protecting it.
We are privileged to bring on NASA engineers, explorers, cave divers, whatever, all the time. And it's not an academic, it's not that they're all geniuses. It's not that they're all any number of things. The thing that unites all the people that we bring on is this pervasive sense of wonder and curiosity about the world. Whatever that may be for, whether that's history or art or science or exploration, whatever, that trait will serve you so well in helping make your life not just fantastic, but so enriching. Like it's a better way to live, to feel that way. So don't ever shut down your own passion for wanting to learn more and be amazed by things, because the world is a pretty amazing place. And that is the best possible message in our last question. I also want to highlight, if you're keen to get outdoors and explore nature, every May we do Backyard Bio. So we get kids going out, explore your local neck of the woods, take pictures of what you find. We'll connect classes around the world with one another so you can share what you've discovered. And if you want to find out more about Heidi, Arctic Ascent is coming soon. Disney Plus, going to be amazing. Alex Honnold, for those who have seen Free Solo, is very cool. And then, of course, your website and social media things linked to that. There's so much more to discover about you. You're on our YouTube channel a bunch. We will bring you on for a talk about that glacier exploration anytime you want. Say the word. You're just welcome back all the time.
Great.
And Dr. Heidi, it's been so fun having you on. Thank you so, so much.
Oh, Jesse, thank you for having me again. Everyone, thank you so, so much for all your wonderful questions. And I'm sure I'll see you again very, very soon. Have a great day.
Have a wonderful day. We'll say farewell for there. We'll